Hey everyone, I'm just going to go through the brief section of notes that go on page 6 and then a little bit onto page 7 in your workbooks. We're going to just talk about a couple different alternative inheritance patterns, some of which we've already seen before, um, starting with multiple alleles. So, traits that have multiple alleles, that means they are going to have um, 3 or more alleles of the same gene that are going to code for a single trait. And again, as we go through these notes, you can hit pause on my video, you can rewind, you can change the playback speed and stuff like that. Um, there are also there's a PowerPoint of this posted, so if you don't like listening, that's fine too. But I'm gonna walk through some of the problems, so that's why the video is usually a little more helpful. Um, so multiple alleles are going to have 3 or more alleles of the same gene. We have been doing a lot of which where there were only 2 alleles, like hitchhiker's thumb versus, can I curve it? No, versus my straight thumb, right? Those were 2 alleles. um, PTC tasters versus not, right? Those are 2 alleles. When we did our blood typing, we learned about how there are actually 3 alleles that influence that trait, that we have an A allele, that we have a B allele, and we have an O allele as well. So that's a really good example of multiple alleles. And then some other connections are on here about how A and B are codominant, a reminder of that, how they both show up because we have blood type AB. And so that's another way that multiple alleles can start getting more complex because they can take on other inheritance patterns like codominance or incomplete dominance. Um, so there's that example. There are many other versions of multiple alleles out there too, which I'm going to keep going through. Multiple alleles can also be applied to like our polygenic traits as well. Excuse me. Polygenic traits are going to be, if you break that word down, poly means many, genic is referring to how many genes we have, right? So there are many genes that are controlling this specific trait. And as we look at them, we are going to see, I kind of pause there. As we look at them, we're going to see this normal distribution curve, basically, or frequency for each trait that is spread across our population, right? So you'll see these in math too, but kind of the extreme ends we're going to see in a much smaller percentage within our human population. And then the mid range is pretty standard and higher percentage, right? So this example that I have with the graph, that's referencing human height. So this goes down to like 4 feet tall and then goes all the way up to 7 feet tall, right? We have seen or we might know people on the extreme ends, but most of us are somewhere within this 5 foot to 6 foot range, right? We also can see that for eye color, there's going to be a bunch of different phenotypes that we can get out of this because multiple genes are influencing our inheritance of that. So it could be located on chromosome number 2 and number 5 and number 22, and have multiple different gene segments influencing it, right? So we have kind of this range over here with light blue all the way to dark brown and black. There's some other intermediates that aren't listed here, right, with our hazel eyes and maybe light green eyes, and so on and so forth. Skin color is another polygenic trait, just like when we did our parenthood activity, right? We had a couple of them: skin color, hair color, eye color, that you had to flip the coin multiple times for because you have multiple genes that are influencing it, right? So we have that full range here as well. And not just genetics are going to be influencing our polygenic traits, right? We could have diet and health pieces can impact our height. And then, right, outside factors like sunlight and things like that can impact our skin color, right? Anyway, our main feature for today is going to be sex-linked traits. Can I hide this somewhere? Over here, that's fine. Okay, are going to be sex-linked traits or X-linked traits. Okay, they kind of are called either or in this situation, but basically we're going to be looking at traits that are passed along by the X chromosome. So this time, as we look at our Punnett squares and how things are influenced, we're going to see the X's and Y's associated to each individual. They're going to be written as like superscripts again. So over here in the left-hand corner, you can kind of see some features that go along with that for a female and a male. Okay. So they're only located on the X chromosome. A reminder from our previous unit that the X chromosome is larger. It has a lot more genes that are linked to it. And so as we see these X-linked traits in action, we often see males affected more commonly than females by these X-linked traits. And the reason behind that is males, like my example that I have down at the bottom left corner here. I'm not sure if you can actually see my mouse highlighting it, but males are XY, right? The Y chromosome indicates the male sex. They only have one X chromosome. So either they have it or they don't. So either they are affected or they aren't. Whereas females are going to have two X chromosomes. So the chances of them showing the X-linked trait is less common. It can still definitely happen, but because males only have that one X, there's a greater chance for them. Okay. So we got, if we were to say that eye color was linked to the X chromosome, we could be talking about where it's located on those X's, right? We see that all the way here for the female with brown eyes. Having a big B would be brown eyes and a little b would be blue eyes. Over here we have a male who has that gene, but they only have the one, right? So they have blue eyes. There's nothing else influencing it. And we don't write anything or link anything else to that Y chromosome because we're talking about X-linked traits only. So what does this look like for some real life examples, right? We talked about color blindness. There's a handful of us in class. Or color deficiency. So this is a recessive disorder, that's linked to the X chromosome. And again, most commonly seen in males. And I believe if females have color blindness, they call it color sensitivity because there's even more going on where it might just be like a pink versus a red that they have trouble viewing. But I guess if we have any females in class that are colorblind, they can attest to that. But the most common one is red-green, but I know that we have some other interesting colorblind examples in class too. So that's one of them. Oh, and if you wanted to check your eyes on this one, but we kind of did that with our human traits activity, right? Another common example you'll see is hemophilia, which has to deal with blood clotting factors. So a normal individual would be non-hemophiliac, and that means their blood does kind of the normal clotting factors, and this is dangerous if they have this recessive hemophilia gene because, right, if you have a simple cut, it's really difficult for your body to stop that bleed naturally on its own. So often people have to take medication in order to ensure there aren't major issues. But we will also run into a term called carrier as we look at sex-linked traits. And I kind of have been using the word carrier in class for some other pieces. But carrier would mean, in our case, for our sex-linked traits, that it's an individual like a female, right, who is XX and is going to have an allele associated to each X chromosome. And an individual that is heterozygous or hybrid for that trait. So it could be, in this case, somebody who has, like the mother up here, who is a carrier of hemophilia, meaning she has one copy of the normal blood clotting gene, and then she has one copy of the recessive hemophilia gene on her. So she carries the allele but shows the normal trait. That would be carrier. Okay. And then some people also wonder about like Y-linked traits. The Y chromosome is much shorter compared to the like X chromosome in general, right? So there's not that many genes that are associated to it, but here are some that are Y-linked that are interesting. How we talked about Klinefelter syndrome before with XXY. There's Jacobs syndrome, which is XYY, right? Increased testosterone levels, that sort of thing. This is where you might see more growth, like taller in stature, that sort of thing. The other one on here is bilateral radial ulnar syntosis. So in your arm, right, you've got your radius and your ulna in your arm, right? That would mean that they're fused together, and that would limit your ability to rotate your arm. And then the other one is hairy ears. That one's just kind of a funny one, but on the Y chromosome, that is linked. Okay, so I know this isn't going to look perfect because I am using a different application, but for our Punnett squares, this is what our setup is going to look like. We're going to take into consideration our sexes of the parents, right? So we're going to look, each problem will have something about a female and a male in there. So that means we got to note that with our X's and our Y's. And then you'll be given information on like whether, well, most likely the trait is going to be recessive. So a small letter, and you're going to link that up as a superscript. All right. So in this case, we have a female that has normal vision, right? Normal vision is capital N, but is a carrier for color blindness, right? So she's carrying that. So she's also going to have a little n associated to her, also known as being heterozygous or hybrid in this situation. She is going to be a reproductive partner with a male who has normal vision. Males are XY, right? And he has normal vision, so a capital N associated to that X chromosome, right? So for both of her X's, we got one big N, we got one little n, and then the male over here is normal vision. Okay, so then we're going to plop those on the outside of our Punnett square just like we normally would, right? But we're keeping the X's linked to that specific allele. Anytime you do a cross with our parents here, or any male-female combination, we're always going to end up with this 50-50 breakdown of whether their offspring could be male or female. And so then your final results, or the question that you might be asked, could be related to how many males are, or what's the potential that their male offspring is colorblind or something like that, or what's the potential that any of their children are colorblind. So just pay attention to the wording. So up top here in the left-hand corner of our Punnett square, top left corner, we have XX with both capital N's, meaning they're both normal vision alleles. So we have a normal vision female. The top right corner is another XX. So we have a female, but this one has normal vision allele and colorblind allele. So we could call this a carrier for color blindness, but she is going to express normal vision. Okay, see all the colors. And then at the bottom for our XYs, our males, right? This first one on the left has the normal vision. And then we have one on the right that would be colorblind because they only have that one X that's being expressed with that lowercase recessive colorblind allele, right? So if I broke down my phenotypes, I could list it like this: 2 normal vision females, or I could get even fancier than that and decipher between the two, like homozygous normal and a carrier, and then one normal vision male and one colorblind male. I might ask you what's the potential that any of their offspring are colorblind, and then that's where you're just looking at the group as a whole, and you'd say, 1 out of 4 or 25% chance that their offspring is colorblind. And then if I asked you what's the percent chance that the male that their son is colorblind, then you're just looking at the male portion of the Punnett square, and that would be 50% chance that their son would be colorblind, right? 1 out of 2. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's it. Then you're going to go on to your assignment for today, which I have posted in Google Classroom, but you will go through and do a whole bunch of different versions of this Punnett square. Okay. Good luck. Email me if you have questions.